Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss the finals of the Fischer Random World Championship. First of all, I'm extremely sorry for not uploading videos for more than a week because I was not at my home, I was out of station, so I'm extremely sorry for that. But as I was out, at that particular point of time, there was a World Championship going on in which there are many top players around the globe playing the tournament, including Magnus Carlsen, Nepomniachtchi, Hikaru Nakamura, Vladimir Fedosiev, and many more, like Northern Abdul Satarov, the talented the rapid world champion. So the tournament is full of excitement, okay? And so everybody who don't know what is the Fischer Random, I must tell them the basic difference in this chess is that in the 8th rank and in the 1st rank, your major pieces are simply randomly placed, you can say. And the pawns remains on the 2nd and the 7th rank. It's the same, but just the 8th rank and the 1st rank pieces are simply randomly placed. The castling rules are exactly same. Like if black wants to do a short castle, it goes to G8, the rook comes to F8. If he wants to do a long castle, the rook goes to B8, the rook comes to C8. Okay, so sorry, the king goes to C8 and the rook comes to D8. So yeah. The reason it's very interesting is because there is no particular theory, and the position is given to the players 10 minutes before the round so that they cannot prepare anything with the engines, and they cannot also go to the coaches for any suggestions. So it's going to be very interesting. In the finals, we have Hikaru Nakamura versus Ian Nepomniachtchi to fight for the Fischer Random World Champion. In the semifinals, all those who don't know, Nepo have beaten Magnus Carlsen and Nakamura have beaten Northern Abdul Satarov to reach the finals. And the finals is going to be simply epic. Both the players are going to play 4 games, and if the results after the 4 games will be equal, then there will be a 5th game. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting encounter. So in the first game, Nepo is playing with the white pieces and Nakamura is playing with the black pieces. I'm keeping Nakamura on our side because I don't want to change the names repeatedly. So yeah. So in the first game of the finals, it's going to be an epic battle. Nepo with the white pieces starts out with 1 b4. Okay, and as I was out of station, though I followed the games, and the similar thing that I found in the games is the players are pushing their rook pawn or the queen pawn. Okay, and yeah, it actually makes a lot of sense because you are opening up your rook file, which is the best idea. So we have b4 in the first move, and Nakamura replied with b5. a4, as you can see, opening up the queen and the rook, and here we have b into a4. Queen into a4, and here e6, opening up the bishop. Knight to c3, knight to g6, knight to g3. Both the players are simply developing the knight because the knights are the easiest piece to develop. And here we have f5 by black. I believe the idea of f5 can be to play f5 hitting the knight and grabbing some more space. So I'd stop it by playing e3 and also opening up the bishop. Bishop to e7, and here we have b5 by white. Advancing the pawn, and I believe that white idea is to play bishop to a3, trading off the dark square bishop. So black, as you can see, it's a very interesting castle. Black simply decides to do a short castle. Rook to a1 by white. White is putting some serious pressure on the pawn on a7. And here Nakamura went for the move f4, hitting the knight and the pawn. Like, if you try to defend the pawn on a7, if you're thinking, then you need to play a rook to b7. And I believe playing rook to b7, though it's the best move according to the engine, but I believe practically it's too hard to find it because you're simply blocking the knight and the bishop because just to protect the pawn on a7, which doesn't make any sense. So it's practically humanly very hard. So Nakamura went for the counter attack by playing f4, opening up the rook and also hitting the knight and the pawn. Knight went back to e2. The best move in this position would have been to play knight to h5, putting some pressure on the pawn on f4. And after fe3, white can respond with either of d3 and fe3. Both the moves are extremely fine. Let's take d3 because it sounds safe, and the position is extremely fine. But we have knight to e2 going back with the knight, and here comes fe3, d3, and here we have c6. The knight would have been good on h5, putting some pressure on the pawn on g7 perhaps, and yeah, okay, not major differences, but the knight on e2 is currently blocking up the bishop on f1. So after c6 we have knight to d4, c5 by Nakamura, knight to f3, bishop to f6, hitting the knight and the rook. Rook comes to a3, sounds very sensible, though bishop to b2 would have been better, adding one more piece into the game, but rook to a3, and now comes d5. And after d5, I would say Nakamura is already having some slight edge. The reason is quite simple, he's having the nice center. White can't go for capturing the a7 pawn in this position because, for example, let's say takes, white simply loses the knight. So bishop to e2 was played. White is trying to do a short castle in this position. Here comes rook to b7, protecting the pawn on a7 now, and here comes short castle. Queen to b8, e4, d4. So yeah, now hitting the knight goes back to d1, bishop to d7, and in this position, black is already prepared to capture the pawn on b5. So white stops it by playing c4. We have end pass, knight into c3, and here we have a6 by Nakamura. A very good move. You can't take with the pawn because the queen is hanging, and if you try to capture with the queen, here comes bishop into c3, and let's take after rook into c3. We have rook to a7, and I believe the queen is trapped. The queen is trapped, and the game is nearly over for white. So here comes e5 by Nepo. I would say that a6 move played by Nakamura was very nice. Here comes e5, and here comes a into b5. Capturing the pawn, hitting the queen, bishop into b5, bishop into b5, knight into b5, and here we have knight into e5. So basically, Nepo did give up the pawn. I don't know why he just simply gave up the pawn in this position, but perhaps he wanted to trade some serious pieces because putting too many pieces in this position would be only good for black because black is having nice coordination of the pieces, I believe. So e5, we have this trading of the pieces, and here we have knight to c3 going back with the knight. Knight takes, pawn takes, and here we have rook to b4 by Hikaru Nakamura. Very good move, hitting the queen and getting this fourth round. And the white king looks a bit too weak compared to the black king. Here comes bishop to e5, putting some pressure on the pawn on h2. Knight to e4, bishop into h2, the most natural move. I don't know, he just didn't went for defending the pawn. Okay, the pawn on f3 is also hanging, the pawn on h2 is also hanging. So he went for the move knight e4, which was the best, doing a counter attack on the pawn on c5. Bishop into h2 check, king moved, bishop to f4, rook to d3, queen to e5 by Nakamura, rook to d1, and here comes rook e4, brilliant move by Nakamura, and fe4 was played, and here comes bishop into c1, and the reason is you can't capture because of this. Sorry, not because of this, because the queen is protecting it, but queen to g5, and you lose the rook. So that's the main idea for capturing this knight, to take away the square of g5. A very nice move played by Nakamura, tactically very alert. And here comes, after bishop into c1, rook into d8, but here comes queen to g5 check, again hitting the rook, king f1, rook into d8, queen check, rook came. Nepo tried to get some counterplay, but there is no counterplay. Black is simply a piece and a pawn up. So like after a couple of moves, I would say on the move number 39, after playing g6 in this position, Nepo decides to resign the game, and Nakamura won the first game of the finals So 3 more rounds to go. So yeah. So currently Nakamura is in the lead. In the second game, both of players drew the game. So it's time to discuss the third game. So in the third game, Nakamura is playing with the white pieces and Nepo is playing with the black pieces. And Nakamura with the white pieces starts out with d4, e4. As you can see, the pieces are simply randomly placed. So yeah, e4. We have d5, pushing up the queen pawn. Logical move, g3 by Nakamura. D to e4, bishop into e4, centralizing the bishop. Definitely the bishop looks extremely powerful. G6, definitely Nepo is also opening up the bishop. F4, pushing up the rook pawn. Queen to d6, queen to e2, knight to f6, developing the knight, and also hitting the bishop to g2, because definitely you do not want to give up the strong bishop, ultra strong bishop, I would say, for the knight. So bishop went back on the g2, bishop to c6, and simply knight to f3, simply developing the piece. Knight to b6, knight to b3, and here you can see this awesome castle in this position. It's a short side castle, and yeah, it's very nice. Bishop to f2, knight to d7, knight to d4, bishop to d5. Definitely, black also don't want to give up the bishop for the knight. So he played bishop to d5, and I believe c5 can be an idea to hit the knight. So first c4 by white, hitting the bishop first, bishop into f3, bishop into f3, and here comes c6 by black. Part of the idea of Nepo is to break in the center, try to make white king a bit weak by playing b5. So in the game we have knight to b3. Nakamura is playing as solid as possible because he's already in the lead. He just needs to make it 2 draws to win the championship. We have e5 by black, bishop to e3, simply defending it, because if you try to capture the pawn, I believe after knight into e5, white is only allowing black to get some counterplay. Rook to d8 is coming up, rook e8 is coming up, some serious pressure over here. So it's going to be risky. So white simply defended by playing bishop e3, a5, because take bishop into f4, and I believe now white is the one who is winning. So a5, as usual, I told you guys that Nepo wants to attack Nakamura's king. d4 was played, ed, knight into d4, rook to e8, and here putting some serious pressure on the e file, and it's starting to get a bit risky for Nakamura now. Knight to c2, and here comes b5 by Nepo. A very nice practical decision, trying to hit the white king. Black king is extremely safe. I believe that black is the one in the driver's seat. It's already very hard. Nakamura decides to do a long castle by doing this, and here we have queen to c7, because the rook was attacking the queen. Queen to d3, and here comes pawn takes. Queen into c4, and rook into e3. Again, a nice an exchange sacrifice by Nepo, though it was not the best move. The best move would have been to play, like, there are moves. Knight to g4 is the one move, and rook e to c8 is second move. Like, after knight g4, if white takes, we have bishop into b2 check. And I believe it could be very risky for white to go wrong. So, but we have rook into e3, giving up an exchange sacrifice, and now playing queen to b6. A very nice idea, hitting the b2 pawn and also hitting the knight on e3. So queen to b3, asking for a queen trade and also defending the pawn and the pawn. Queen to a7, queen to a3, and here comes knight to d5 by black. And now I believe knights start becoming very very tense moments now, because currently the black is simply attacking the pawn on b2. Something in the center can happen, so it's already very tricky. Knight to c4 was played in the game. Rook to b4 by Nepo, hitting the knight. Bishop into d5, cd5, knight to e5, knight into e5, pawn takes, bishop takes. So in this position, I would definitely prefer black because of this, and white king is too passive. Rook to d2 was played, queen checking move, bishop into b2. If you try to put your king over here, simply rook into b2 check, and after, like, if queen takes, you lose the queen. If you take with the rook, you lose the queen. That's the reason king to d1 was played, bishop into b2 now. Queen f3, queen e7, rook e1, bishop to e5, rook to e3, and comes d4, rook comes. And after a couple of moves, queen e6, rook to f2. It's still very tense moments. Now White is the one who is putting pressure on the pawn on f7. Bishop to c7, rook to e2, queen to d6, rook to d2, queen to c5, and now black is trying to play rook to c1, king move, rook comes, and I don't want to waste any further time. So after a couple of moves, black started to make a serious progress, and like he's not having the a pass pawn, he's having the d pass pawn. The rooks are all tied up in the d5, and okay, now Nepo starts to grab some serious things, and in this position, you can say now black find an amazing move, f5, simply hitting the queen. The queen needs to go back, and now everything was simply traded. And in this position, on the move number 53, after playing bishop into d2, Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces decides to resign the game. Now the scores are equal. The reason is quite simple that Nakamura resigned was because if he even tries to capture the bishop, black is having 3 pawns advantage, which is extremely strong. He just can simply trade the queen for 1 pawn, and he can just make another queen. So amazing game. The games are all tied up. In the 4th round, again Nepo and Nakamura drew the game. Now it's time for the 5th and the final game. Any player wins will win the title of the World Championship Fischer Random Chess Champion. So let's discuss the 5th game. The most epic game. Nakamura playing with the white pieces, Nepo playing with the black pieces. 1 b3 by Hikaru Nakamura, opening up the bishop. Here comes b6. Nepo does the same. e4 pushing up the queen pawn, e5, g3, opening up another bishop, g6, f4, f5. So basically Nepo is simply copying Nakamura. Here comes f into e5, bishop into e5, e into f5, bishop into h1. So like many things are happening, very crazy things. The bishops are basically open on the diagonals, and there is a trade in the center where white simply captured the pawn on f5. So basically the bishop is hanging, but again white is also hitting the bishop. So bishop into h1 was played, and now comes bishop into e5. So equal position I believe, but I think white is having the edge because black pawn structure is I would say a bit isolated, and yeah, that's the reason white is having the edge. Bishop to c3, bishop to c6, knight to e3 hitting the pawn, queen to a5, queen to h5, queen to f2, knight to h6, knight to e2, knight to e6, rook to f1, king to b7. Not doing a short castle, can he? Okay, can't do the short castle. I don't know why. But yeah, he can do this long castle. Okay, yeah, he can't do a long castle because he needs to first move the rook. But instead, at the place of doing a long castle, he decides to do a short castle. Sorry, he didn't decide to do short castle. He can do a short castle, but in the game, he decides to play king to b7, an artificial castle. D4, knight to g4, queen into f5, queen f, knight f5. So what's happening in this position? Black is having 5 pawns, white is having 6 pawns. So white is in pawn advantage. Knight into h2, knight's equal. Rook to e1, rook to f8, hitting the knight. Knight goes back to e3, bishop to e4, d5 hitting the knight. Knight moves to g5, knight to f4, rook to e8, king to b2. So basically Nakamura perhaps like the idea of Nepo, so he does the same. Bishop to f3, and here comes g6. Pushing up the pawn, trying to simply like you say dirty the pawn structure of black. In the game we have c6, not capturing the pawn. Knight to c4 was played, knight to e4, knight to e5, now hitting the pawn on d7. Knight into c3 takes, bishop to g4, protecting the pawn. Rook to e3, h5, cementing the bishop, rook to e1, and here we have this because of this. So basically, black gave up the rook for the knight, but in the exchange, he's still getting the exchange back, which happened in the game. Okay, in this position, perhaps Nepo missed rook e8. I believe Nepo missed rook e8. He thought that after like perhaps giving up the rook for the knight is fine because he's having knight f3 and he's going to get back to exchange. But now he comes rook f8. You cannot capture the rook because you lose the rook, and white is simply a rook exchange up. So rook f6 was played, rook h1, and Hikaru is simply exchange up, rook into d6, rook to g8, rook to d2, knight takes, and here white is simply exchange up. He's having the passed pawn, so it was very comfortable for Nakamura because of Nepo. He simply miscalculated everything. And what I can say, Nakamura simply traded the knights. Rook comes, and yeah, the e4 pawn is also weak, though it's a passed pawn, but nothing is happening. So after a couple of moves in this position, after move number 48, it's mate in 3. You can't stop the mate. So after move number 48, Napomiyashi, with the black pieces, decides to resign the game, and we have the Fischer and the World Chess Champion Hikaru Nakamura from USA. He's also a YouTuber. So after every game, every day, he posts the videos on the YouTube. You can also go and check it out. That's his channel name is GM Hikaru, or yeah, I think that's his name. So the game was simply epic. Okay, I just liked how Nakamura played, and I think the biggest advantage of Nakamura for having this whole tournament is because he likes to play on YouTube. He plays on chess.com, like Bomb Cloud, stuff like that. So he's already, you can say he's already prepared for anything and anything. So a position like this was extremely fine for Hikaru Nakamura because he's already used to play anything. So I think playing on chess.com for YouTube basically gave an advantage to Hikaru Nakamura to in this particular tournament because the players are out of theory, but Nakamura is like, I do this daily. Okay, so he actually had a lot of experience playing randomly, maneuvering the pieces, having the best places for the pieces. So yeah, that's it. So we have this epic encounter between Nepo and Hikaru won the Fischer Random World Chess Champion. So I hope you guys have liked the video, and if you did, then make sure to like the video. If you're new to our channel, then make sure to subscribe to our channel and make sure to share this video with everyone. They must know that Hikaru Nakamura is the Fischer Random World Chess Champion. So I'm going to see you soon. Till then, stay tuned and keep watching One Shot Chess.